Citizens of the universe, it is time for Neutral Lens Podcast Episode 6. Another week is in the rearview mirror, and we have some things to discuss. So let's get into it. Before we begin, though, if you guys have any questions you want answered, topics you want discussed, at Neutral Lens Pod on all socials, send me a DM. I'll get to in a future episode. All right, first question is, I'm in junior year in high school. There's a girl in my science class that I really like. How do I ask her out? Well, I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your specific situation. I think it's always different every single time. You need to approach it a little bit differently, but just be yourself. Like, I think so many people try and change who they are when they're around people they like. And it applies in other scenarios too, but mainly when it comes to having crushes. A lot of people want to be different. A lot of people want to present themselves as the best version of themselves they can be. So like they'll work out, they'll be like, oh, look how strong I am, like look how impressive I am. Try and show off a little bit just to maybe catch her attention, catch his attention, whatever it is. And I feel like when you're being a little bit disingenuous towards yourself, it can create problems down the line. Like, I know a lot of people just want that one win, which is to ask someone out and they say yes. But you also have to think about 6 months down the line. Like, if you are being radically different and just trying to be someone else that you're not, maybe that person says yes to who they think you are and not who you actually are. So if you ask her out now and you're trying to be show offy, you're trying to be cool, first of all, people can really easily tell when you're not being true to self, and that kind of behavior can lead to her actually being more put off by you and lead to you getting rejected. But aside from that, if she really likes the kind of fake you that you put up there, and you guys have a couple of dates, 3-6 months down the line, she starts to hang out with you more and starts to discover you were pretty different from what she thought you were, she's gonna leave. She's gonna be like, okay, you're not who I thought I was gonna be dating. This relationship is over. I'm going to move on and find somebody else. And I think facing the rejection right at the point of asking her out is much better than dealing with it 6 months down the line. Because while you've had a good 6 months, you put in so much effort, you put in so much time to this relationship, only for her to just say, like, this is not what I wanted, and for her to leave. So that's not what you want. And it's I think it's better to just be yourself, even if what you think yourself is like quite flawed, because none of us are perfect. And sometimes the most attractive thing can be how we work on our flaws. And I think you should just be honest to yourself, even if you're super awkward about asking her out. Maybe you don't have the most charisma. Maybe you are just like, hey, I kind of like you, I guess. Can we like hang out? I don't know. And even if you say something like that, if she doesn't like you, she's going to say no matter how good your asking out was. But if she does like you, then she's going to sit through that and she's going to say yes. It doesn't matter. If you're awkward and you ask someone, it doesn't change whether they like you or not. Maybe get her alone, because it can be a little embarrassing in front of friends. But I don't know why you're asking her out in front of friends, because that's really hard no matter what. But if you guys are alone and you ask her out, I don't really think it matters that much how you ask her out, as long as you do it. Because if she wants to go with you, she's going to say yes. It does not matter. It's a little different if you just met. Like, I assume that you guys have known each other for a little bit, and at least you've been in class for a few months together, and it's not like she's a complete stranger to you. You know a little bit about each other, I assume. If it's a situation where it's like a bar or, on the streets, and you kind of just met this other boy or this other girl, then I do think that having a little bit of that charisma, having a little bit of that exuberant personality that can really attract somebody can be more important, because you only have a short period of time to make an impression. It's not like one of those things where you get to spend several months with somebody and you really get to know them and you start to develop some sort of feeling. But it's just on a whim. Oh, hey, like this person seems like they'd be okay to go out with, or this person doesn't seem like someone I'd be interested in. So that sort of snap decision making that you're forcing somebody to do when you met them 2 minutes ago, that is when it's a lot more important to really make a good first impression. But unless you're in that situation, like if it's a girl in your class, I don't think it matters that much as long as you've talked to her more than once. Just ask her out and see how it goes. If she likes you, she's gonna say yes. Just make sure you've at least talked to her a little bit so you're not going in completely blind. But yeah, like even in the situation of making a good first impression, you still don't want to be too different from yourself. Like if that's not just the person you are, then I wouldn't try to do that. Because again, 6 months down the line, things could change. She'll find out your true self, or he'll find out your true self. But other than that, just not being yourself and being too fake doesn't come across well at all. And a lot of people don't think about it, but a lot of people can tell, even if they don't know what it is. And it'll just be off-putting. So, be yourself, do what you feel is best. Don't think about it too much, and understand that everybody's awkward and it's okay. All right, that is topic number 1, question number 1. This next one is something that I've actually thought about quite a bit. It's how do physics and psychology relate? I think that a lot of people kind of see physics as one thing and psychology as this completely different thing. But I think a lot of patterns can be very, very similar. And, to say they're two completely different things, like obviously they talk about two different things, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of things in the universe can be explained the same way. And yeah, like for example, the human body is made up of a bunch of molecules, a bunch of atoms. And those atoms and those subatomic particles are governed by the laws of physics and then quantum physics, but we're not going to get that far. But, the human brain is no different. It is made up of a ton of atoms, and those atoms follow the laws of physics. And I think on a larger scale, they still follow the laws of physics, like even in the cosmos, like the sun doesn't have a different set of laws that it runs by just because it's bigger at its simplest form. It still follows all the different principles that you find in physics. So I'll give you a couple examples. Like, for example, everything in the universe wants to be in its ground state. What that means is like everything wants to be in its lowest energy state possible. It's like reaching absolute zero, in a sense, right? And I think humans, we're the same way. Your brain wants to be lazy. You don't want to do work. You want to do as much as you can while doing as little as you can, if that makes sense. Like your brain is lazy. If you can get away with not doing your homework, you're not going to do your homework. We're constantly finding ways to just try and cut back on the amount of work we have to do, or the amount of things that we don't want to do. Like, and it's not even always a bad thing necessarily. Like, not doing your homework is one thing, but you don't want to spend time and like so much work on, for example, like picking crops. So what we ended up doing was we ended up making machines so we can just drive around and it does it for us. So those are examples of like where we can really innovate to essentially try and be as lazy as possible. And again, it's not a bad thing. Finding ways to increase our convenience and our quality of life is a really good thing. But it's sort of this idea that like, everything in the universe wants to be in its lowest energy state, and so do humans. And it doesn't even like just apply to individual humans, but humanity as a whole. Like I said before, the same rules apply to a single atom as it does to the sun. For example, like our whole society, the organization of our communities, of our society, takes a lot of energy. Organization in the universe takes a lot of energy to upkeep, and once you start losing that energy, you start losing that structure. Like the universe wants to be disorganized. It wants to kind of be in this state of absolute chaos because it doesn't take any energy. And I think society is the same way. Like when we didn't have any sort of structure whatsoever, it was just complete anarchy. Everyone's doing whatever they want. But when you start to put in place structure, it takes energy to kind of keep it up, to form a government, to run that government. And you're seeing that in the world. It takes so much effort to run society in a structured manner, but that energy is worth it, because when you have these structures in place, you can do so much more with it than if you guys are just disorganized. Like, again, that united we stand, divided we fall thing. You can do a lot more when you're organized, but it takes energy to do so. And without that constant energy, you're going to fall into anarchy. Everything's going to get disorganized. Everything's going to get chaotic, and that lack of coordination, right? So it takes a lot to run society, and it's the same way with the universe as well, where, for example, if you have a liquid of several, with several different solubles in it, separating all of it takes a lot of energy to kind of organize. Like, I don't know whether it's like you added sugar and salt to separate the sugar to one side and salt to the other side takes energy, but then you kind of just let it run and let the energy flow out. Then it all mixes together and becomes a huge mess. So, things like that, where everything is just, it's all dependent on each other, I guess. But yeah, like, psychology and physics, I think while they govern two different things, like one is the human mind and one is what makes up the human mind, I guess, it still kind of follows the similar patterns, where they're not necessarily talking about the same thing, and obviously not everything applies, but the patterns are very similar. And I think it goes beyond just physics and psychology. It goes to like everything as well. I think like a lot of things in the universe have very, very similar concepts that you can universally apply, and that you don't have to think of everything as different. Like, I don't think you have to think of soccer and basketball as different. I think that the way that, or even like chess, or compare that to war, like battles, they're all kind of played and fought the same way, where at the most basic level, you're trying to attack or you're trying to defend, and there's certain ways that you can do that. It's a little bit different with dribbling a basketball, shooting it, versus kicking around a soccer ball. But at the end of the day, the concepts of resources and time and coordination and things like that those are all the same. So yeah, I think it's just an interesting like perspective to think about things, and instead of like just separating everything else out, just it's all the same. It's all the same. It's a good way to think about things, I think. Just make it simpler. All right, let's go to the last topic. So this is something that I see thrown around a lot, because I am a gamer, so I see in the gaming community where a lot of the times pro players will complain about some things, and I'll see in the comments, it's just a game, bro, or like you're getting paid to play a game for a living, chill out, you're so privileged, just shut up. And I want to push back on that narrative a little bit, because yes, it is just a game. It really is. To most people, you play it for fun, you play it for entertainment, you play it to enjoy yourself, or to bond with friends, or just in general to have a good time. But for those players, it no longer becomes having a good time, it becomes a profession. And once you start playing professionally, once you start making money off of it, once it starts becoming your livelihood, it is no longer just a game. It is a dream job of sorts, but it's the same kind of dream job as getting into music, playing sports, or even if you really like being a lawyer and now you're a lawyer, it's the same thing. You really do enjoy it, and a lot of people enjoy it, but it no longer is just a game to them, because their living depends on that game. And so while to you it's just a small win or loss or whatever, to these people it can be the difference between like a lot of money and the rest of their careers. It can really affect everything when it comes to what they're doing, because at this point their entire lives revolve around this certain game, and yours don't. You have a job somewhere else, or maybe you're at school, and that's what you're focusing on. But for these people, everything depends on this game, and if it doesn't work out, GG, as they say. And besides that, like everything that you do at this point then becomes under a microscope. That's not typical to have a ton of pressure put on you. And okay, of course, like, yeah, your boss is putting you under a microscope. A lot of bosses micromanage. That is true. But you don't have a ton of you don't have thousands, millions of people watching your every move and then criticizing you for it. Like if you were working as a coder, and you make a not the best, not the most optimal code, maybe there's a couple of issues, and then everyone starts calling you terrible and saying that you're not doing your job right and they should replace you, and like you're gonna let that get to your head. If that's what people had to go through every single day, that's not a typical job. There's so much that goes on and that goes into it that makes it more than just a game at that point. And like, again, you could say the same thing about coding. You could say the same thing about, designing furniture, houses, fashion, or cooking even. Like, it's just a hobby to a lot of people. And then you're getting paid for it. So now is that just like a hobby that, you shouldn't be really that respected? Go get a real job. No one says that about a cook. But why do they say that about games? Is it just because it's called a game? Like, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. And yes, it is a huge privilege for a lot of these people to be able to do this. They don't have to do hard manual labor. I think the people who are actually saying their lives are more difficult than not making a lot of money doing hard labor, that is stupid, yes. But there's a lot of people who are just, they're a little bit unaware, yes. But for them to say that their life is hard, and then for people to kind of, I can't curse, for them to, pile on these people for that, I think is just not the right approach, because it is really hard to do something professionally with a ton of eyes on you, and you're so stressed out. Everything that you have been working towards revolves around your performance. And like, yeah, it's really hard to deal with that. It's not hard the same way as a lot of people have to struggle financially. Yes, that is true. It's not hard in that way, but it doesn't make it not difficult. You know what I mean? And like, there's a lot of people who do complain, and like they are unaware of what they're saying. Like, oh, my life is so difficult, and like, yes, it is a huge privilege. But I'm talking about the people who are just like, oh, it's just a game. Why are you so mad about it? I think at some point it does become like a jealousy take, because it does take a ton of effort, a ton of talent to be able to reach that point where you're playing games professionally that thousands, millions maybe of other people have tried to do and they couldn't do it. So yeah, I mean, again, if there are people who are trying to say their job is harder than manual labor, or maybe it is harder, but like to say like their life is hard because of it, that is quite stupid. But for people to say you're just playing a game, it's not just a game. It is a job, and it is a very difficult job. They are getting paid a lot. It is very privileged, but it's not just a game, so kind of find a balance between the two, I guess. All right. I think that'll do it for episode 6. I'll try not to ramble too much next time, but thank you guys for listening as always, and I'll see you next week.